Let me say it as simply as I can. Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Alrighty, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. The inaugural episode of Defending Freedom and Liberty, a show that's going to talk about economics, history, whatever we want, Constitution, anything like that. Before we get into the topics today, I actually want to go over how it is that this whole program of mine came about. Probably about a year ago, a colleague of mine that I work with in my regular job, who I do actually plan on having on the show here very soon. I'm not sure what I would necessarily clarify him as far as his political position. I would say maybe Democrat with some socialist tendencies. I mean, I don't really want to speculate. I'd rather ask him personally, but hopefully you get the idea. So, and I am basically a libertarian or an anarcho-capitalist, whichever one you prefer. And I'll get into all that at some other point in time as to how I came to get that. But anyway, so while we would be, as we were working, various topics would come up, and I would start mentioning to them, articles I read about, the war or the stock market or minimum wage or whatever the case may be. And then he would say, well, no, here's why I don't believe that that's right. So I believe in, my position, is I believe in capitalism, free markets, no state, and, laissez-faire, basically. Hands off, the market can fix everything. Whereas he believes, and many others do, that you need a state, that capitalism is evil, that you have, chronic unemployment, that the greedy people, run everything, and we'd all work for, 2 cents an hour. And basically, if there was no government, we'd all be like the kids in the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom movie, where we'd all be working in the caves in shackles, for $1 a day or however the myth goes. But that's basically, his position, where we need government to help the poor, and we have to keep a chain on the rich and all that. So we would go back and forth almost every day on different articles and different topics that we would talk about. And I said, man, we should do a podcast or a program or something. And he said, what, like a Hannity and Combs? I said, yeah, I guess, something like that. So I was thinking about doing that. And then the only problem with that is, he lives pretty far away from me, and time, we work incredibly different schedules. He gets off, late at night, and I actually get off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So very conflicting schedules. Now, of course, the beauty of the internet allows us to, we could do Skype, or phone calls, regular phone calls. So I have some software and everything that I'm going to be having guests on and things like that. So anyway, but the idea is still stuck in my head. I still wanted to do this because, and I know this, as I say it back now, it sounds ridiculously stupid. But as I was arguing and debating people on Facebook, and I'm slapping myself already just for saying, debating people on Facebook, because it's just a waste of time. You sit there and you can write, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs about a certain topic, and the people will debate you, and they'll cherry pick. They'll pick out one thing of your 25 different points that you make, and they'll say, aha, but this one is wrong. See, but they won't agree with you, and half the stuff they don't read anyway. So I got tired of doing that. So I approached a couple people that I know that have various internet programs out there. And I started talking to them, looking at the cost and the benefits and stuff like that. And, for the cost, I said, yeah, I mean, sure, I could pay, $100 or $200 a show or whatever it is. But I can also do it for free. Technically, I mean, everything that you hear right now, the only thing that I actually paid for that you're, in my little makeshift studio here is the microphone. I could have used, I have a wireless headset microphone that I could have used for free. Then basically I would have spent no money, but the sound quality on that was not very good. And so I figured, everything else I got for free, the software, music, everything else, I'll pay, $60 is worth it to get my opinion out there. So I just decided to do it myself. I figured out everything I needed to do. I know how to record Skype calls and everything, so I'm good there. So that's really how this show came to exist. And again, from a lot of irrational positions that I was, arguing against, which are common positions from individuals. Government is good, corporations are wicked. Government saves everyone, corporations are evil, nasty, and they don't want to pay anybody anything. The same stuff that everybody was taught in, 4th grade, 5th grade, high school, all that stuff. And I don't think anybody who believes that is dumb. I don't believe they're stupid. I don't think they're an idiot. What else would you believe if that's all you've been taught your whole life? What else would you believe? So basically, I don't try to change people's minds. What I hope is that they'll at least listen to my side of the argument and just maybe say, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. And perhaps that will lead them to look up some of the things I talk about and go from there, and they can make their own decisions. As the old saying goes, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So I'm not going to change anybody's mind by just simply, saying, well, the free market is awesome, and that's it. So that's really how this thing came to be. It's actually been in the works for a few months. I've just had a lot of stuff going on, and I finally got the microphone in the mail today. So I figured, why not take advantage of it, and why not go ahead and start now? No time like the present. So the first, a couple topics I want to talk about today. Minimum wage, definitely gonna address that. Somebody sent me an email asking me if I would talk about that. A free market in drugs, meaning prescription drugs, not marijuana and stuff like that, which that's a topic for another time. And then an article, I want to start with an article I read, and this will lead me right into the minimum wage, because I saw this article today and I was completely blown away. So here, the title of the article, and I will put the link in the notes below the video if you want to read it for yourself. But basically, here's the headline. In North Dakota, Walmart employees start at $17.40 an hour. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, okay, I got to read this. What's is this one of those like joke, onion type stories or something like that? So it's from the libertarianrepublic.com, which you may or may not believe, but basically, so I'm just going to read you a couple lines of the article, and I'm going to kind of talk about what it is he's saying. So there's a company in North Dakota called Williston. That's actually, a city in North Dakota called Williston. It's very remote. It's a very remote city in North Dakota, but regardless of its remoteness, there's actually an economic boom going up there because of the shale oil and everything like that. So this company, Bakken, so they produce 1 million barrels of oil per day. It's one of the top 10 oil fields in the entire world. So the city's unemployment rate, because of that company, the city's unemployment rate is 0.9%. Not even 1% unemployment in that town. So this guy, basically what he did, the doctor who wrote this article, so he took a picture of the sign. There's a big sign at Walmart, and it says, starting employees $17.40 an hour, now hiring. And this is an excellent article to talk about the minimum wage. So one would ask, okay, well, so how come in North Dakota they're paying $17.40 an hour to start, but everybody, down in like Texas or here in Arizona or Philadelphia or New York, they're all making $8 or $9 an hour, and they're all protesting. So right off the bat, So a lot of those people in the fast food workers, so they're protesting. They say, we want $15 an hour. Well, this Walmart is already paying above that. So even if they got $15 an hour, that's still less than people starting at Walmart in North Dakota are making. So why is this happening? What's the deal? How come North Dakota can pay $17.40 an hour and Arizona and Philadelphia and New York have to pay, $9? They only have to pay $9. Well, it's because of the same exact things that work in every other type of the market, every other factor, supply and demand. The problem is, even if Walmart wanted to pay minimum wage, they wouldn't be able to hire anyone. No one would take these jobs because everyone else is already going into the shale oil business. No one's willing to work for $7.25 an hour. That's the problem. That's how free markets work. If Walmart is basically stuck in the free market, the local labor market, just local, because they could obviously they probably started at like $9 an hour. Nobody's coming in to apply. $10, nothing. So they have to compete with the oil industry up there. That's how markets work. So in order just to get people to get the jobs there, they have to offer $17.40 an hour, 2.5 times the minimum wage. I mean, that should be evidence right there that you cannot have a national minimum wage for every state. Like, it can't be the same. So Washington can't come out and say, okay, minimum wage, $8 an hour, because every place is different. There's going to be some towns that are very poor that can't afford to pay $8 an hour. And so they'll have very few employees and then a lot of high unemployment. So he also talks about, one of his other points is, again, like I mentioned, he says you won't hear anyone in this town protesting, wanting the, quote, living wage, using that living wage argument, which is one of those terms that it doesn't really even make sense. What is a living wage? And the problem with that is everybody say, oh, well, it's got to be enough to support a family and all this other stuff. Well, the problem with that is not everyone's the same. So how can you set a living wage? Are you going to start discriminating against people? So if you say, okay, well, this person is married and they have 3 kids, so they deserve $15 an hour, where this guy is single, he has no kids at all, so he only deserves $9 an hour. Both have the same skills, but this person just happens to have 3 kids, so he gets a higher wage just for having 3 kids. Is that a living wage? Do teenagers deserve living wages? I would argue no. And kind of on a sidetrack to that, when I start debating people on the minimum wage, one of the things I always ask them is, okay, if the minimum wage is such a great law, why do they have exceptions to it? Now, most people don't know that actually in the minimum wage law there are exceptions to that law. Basically, so their exceptions are for teenagers, some like waitresses and stuff, those kind of workers in certain states. They have their own little wage laws, and handicapped people. So if the minimum wage law is so great, why do they have to have exceptions for handicapped people and teenagers and stuff like that? It's because they know that if handicapped people and teenagers have to make the same money as everyone else, they're not going to get hired. And again, there's nothing against handicapped people, nothing against teenagers. I was a teenager once, but you cannot pay a teenager with 0 skills $8 an hour or $15 an hour. It doesn't even make sense. That's why there's exceptions, because the government knows, yes, of course, if you force McDonald's to hire 16-year-olds $15 an hour, nobody's going to hire them, because why would you hire a teenager for $16 an hour or $15 an hour when you can hire, a 30-year-old for $15 an hour who's got a lot more skills, he's been in the labor force a lot longer, and he's got more value to the company. If you had to choose between the teenager and the 30-year-old, all things equal, you're going to choose a 30-year-old. That's why they have exceptions. Same thing with handicapped people, because they know if the handicapped people have to get to demand the same wage as the 30-year-old or the non-handicapped person, well, of course they're not going to hire the handicapped person. That's just it's a business. That's the way it works. So that's why Walmart is forced to pay that high wage. They can't you cannot refute that. There's no, or I don't see any argument that anyone could give to justify why, how this proves anything. The only thing that it proves is that that's what the Austrians have been saying all along, the Austrian economists, that wages are the same thing. They're prices just like anything else. When you go to buy a TV, it's the same exact thing. It's supply and demand. So the supply of labor is short for McDonald's, for Walmart in North Dakota. The demand for Walmart is very high. There has to be a market clearing wage. And I don't know if it's the $17.40 an hour. It could be higher. It doesn't say that a lot of people took the job or have taken the jobs yet. It just says that's what they're offering. So this also blows a hole right through the whole argument. They say, well, we need minimum wages because businesses won't pay good wages. They're greedy. Okay, well, if Walmart's so greedy, why are they offering $17.40 an hour? More than most people probably, in the lower 20 states make. I mean, it's just ridiculous that it's ridiculous that someone would even make that argument now. I mean, this right here is proof that businesses are not greedy. So then the question becomes, okay, well then if they're paying it, so how come Arizona, Texas, New York, Philadelphia, how come they're not paying $17.40 an hour? It's because the supply of people that can do that job is very high and the demand is very low. So think about it. Think about when you go into McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's. Now, let's be honest. The people that are serving you the food, they're not Ivy League Harvard graduates here. We're not dealing with, Stephen Hawking's and geniuses. No, they're not stupid, but they have no skills. They're a lot of times entering into the workforce, or sometimes they are 30, 40 years old. But again, they don't really have a lot of skills. So what would happen? Ask yourself this question. Take two people. Take a cashier at McDonald's. That's all she does. Just a cashier. Take that person. Now take the person who fixes those computer terminals whenever they break, because it ain't the guy, ringing up your cheeseburger that fixes that thing when it breaks. Take the cashier, and now take the IT guy that they have to call to get in here. Now, if they were both fired on the same exact day, ask yourself this question. How hard would it be for the owner of McDonald's to go out and find someone who could do the job of a cashier? I would argue there's probably people sitting in his dining area that he could probably get on a loudspeaker and say, hey, I have a job for a cashier here that pays $8 an hour. Who wants it? You could fill it right then and there. How long would it take to train that person? Relatively fast. I mean, a 12-year-old could work at McDonald's. A 10-year-old could work there. What about the janitor? How hard is it to replace a janitor at McDonald's? Not hard. Now the IT guy, how hard is it to replace him? Now, someone's going to say, well, it could be the same thing. There could be an IT guy sitting there. Sure. Well, the point I'm trying to make is that the skill set for an IT specialist is much higher than the skill set for a cashier at McDonald's. That's why it's filled with mostly teenagers, because they have very little skills. They don't know enough. They don't know how to run a business. They don't know how to do other things. That's why those jobs are there. Now, I was reading an article a couple weeks ago, and they had a video in it, and a lady gets on there and she says, well, I am having a hard time. I make $9.25 an hour at McDonald's. I'm having a hard time raising my family on that. It's just not enough. I need a wage. Now, right there, whose fault is it that you have 3 kids? Is it McDonald's fault, or is it your fault? Whose fault is it? My point is, you cannot blame McDonald's or Walmart or Burger King for your poor life choices. Just because you screwed up and you had kids early, I'm not saying you don't love your kids. They're probably great kids. But that doesn't change the fact that you can't blame McDonald's. You can't demand a higher wage simply because you have children. That just doesn't make that's wrong. That's basically you're stealing. So you can't do that. So it's not McDonald's fault that you have 3 kids. What you're supposed to do. So let's let's kind of go back in time. Let's take those, and I've had this debate many times. I'm not going to go into the whole, logistics of it, but the gas station attendants. Now, if you watch the movie Back to the Future, you see the car pull up to the gas station, and the 5 guys run out there. Now, oftentimes, the people that did that job, or those jobs rather, were teenagers. Now, what did they do when nobody had any gas? When nobody stopped for gas? Well, a lot of those gas stations also had mechanic shops. So what those teenagers would do, they'd make 50 cents an hour or whatever the minimum wage was in the 50s, a quarter, I don't know. But basically when no one was getting gas, those teenagers would go into the garage and help the mechanic or learn the trade of a mechanic. Then at some point, after a year or two of learning how to repair cars, they would then themselves become mechanics, and then so on and so on. Then a new teenager would come in and the cycle would continue. Well, what happens to that kid if he's not allowed, if he can't get a job as a gas station attendant now because the job doesn't exist? How does he learn how to be a mechanic? Well, now the only way for him to be a mechanic is he has to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars. He has to go to school to learn how to be a mechanic when he could have learned for free on the job. Now, why is that better? Why is going to school and paying thousands of dollars and getting into debt, why is that better than on-the-job training? You could argue the same thing for McDonald's, Walmart. The CEO of Walmart now, I think he may have stepped down recently, but the recent CEO of Walmart started in the shipping department way back in 1982, I think, or something like that. He started as just in the shipping department and in the warehouse, and he worked his way up to CEO. Now, what would have happened if that job in the warehouse never existed? Well, he never would have got the job, and then he never would have moved up and up and up. That's that's what entry level jobs are supposed to be. What are teenagers supposed to do? So let's say you graduate high school, because these jobs are going away. I mean, you're already seeing traces of these jobs going away when you go into Walmart or the grocery store and they have these self-checkouts. That's the beginning stages of the cashiers leaving. It's either that or raise prices. And that's the last thing companies ever want to do, is raise prices. Everybody thinks they want to raise prices, but they don't. They would love to raise prices if everyone didn't care about the cost. But again, all things equal, the law of supply and demand tells us that when the price of something increases, people demand less of it. When the price of something decreases, people demand more of it. Hence why stores have sales and not, that's why stores advertise, hey, we're having 50% off or 20% off. When was the last time you were at a mall or online or anywhere and you saw a sign or an advertisement that said, hey, you better hurry up and buy all your stuff now because next week we're raising all our prices by 20%. We're having a 20% inflation sale because we're raising prices, so you need to buy now. I don't ever remember seeing anything like that. Every place is always advertising for discounts, discount, sales, and everything else. Well, because again, that's the law of supply and demand. When stuff falls in price, people buy more of it. The perfect example of that is cell phones, flat screen TVs. I mean, computers. It's this. It just goes on and on and on. So, I really encourage some people to read this article. Like I said, it's a very, very good article, and it really blows a hole in the whole minimum wage debate, because again, they always blame the corporations. Oh, they're so greedy, they're so wicked. They hate the poor. We don't like the poor. We want to stick it to them because everybody thinks, as Tom Woods loves to say, and I'm going to quote Tom Woods here, as he says, because people believe that if we don't have a minimum wage, that the economy is going to be dominated by little short men with white mustaches running around with sacks of money. That's basically what's going to happen. I definitely encourage you guys to check out Tom Woods if you can. He's probably one of my heroes in the Libertarian Party, and he's opened my eyes so much. So if you get a chance, check out some of his stuff. Maybe one day I'll even get to have him on here. I would love to have him on here. So that's the North Dakota Walmart article. Like I said, I'll put that in the notes. And, we kind of talked about minimum wage. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is a free market in prescription drugs. And this is a personal story. So probably since about 2004, 2005, I want to say. I was on this medication. I'm not going to go into the name of it or anything, but basically I was on this medication that I chose to take, and it was not covered by insurance. So if I wanted it, I had to pay out of pocket for it. Well, for a 3-month supply, it was $350 for a 3-month supply out of pocket. I mean, ridiculously expensive. I used to get so mad every time I would go and buy it. And, I did that for probably 8 or 9 years. I mean, obviously I spent thousands and thousands of dollars doing that. Well, recently, I stopped taking it about 8 months ago. I just got tired of taking it. And then I remember in January, Merck owned a patent to this particular drug. The patent ran out. So I was like, okay, cool. The price is probably going to go down a little bit. So maybe I will go back into it. But, I got to wait a while because, the patent, as soon as the patent comes off, the price isn't going to immediately fall. It's going to take some time. So I waited, and I kind of forgot all about it. Well, last week, I was like, you know what? I saw an empty bottle in my medicine cabinet, and I said, oh man, I forgot all about this stuff. I'm going to give them a call. I'm going to give Costco a call and see how much this stuff is now. So I call the lady, and I'm like, yeah, how much is, XYZ? And she goes, oh, hold on a second. Okay. She gets back on. She's like, that'll be $27.99. I'm like, okay, so it's $28 a month. She's like, no, it's $28 for 3 months. I'm like, I almost dropped the phone. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? It's $28 now. The last time I bought it was $350 for 3 months. Now it's $28. $28, $7 a month, basically, for the same medication. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. So I said, yeah. She's like, do you want to, renew your prescription because it had expired? I said, yeah, definitely. $27, sure. So, or $28, sure, absolutely. So I went and picked it up. What's this, Friday? I went and picked it up Wednesday. I go up there, and she comes out, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, there was a mistake. It's actually $23. And I said, oh, well, yeah, well, okay, well, try to get it right next time, you wicked Costco person, you evil capitalist. I demand that you charge me more because that's what the public says you're supposed to do. So then she asked me, she's like, oh, well, I see this isn't covered by insurance. And I said, yeah, no, it's no big deal. $28, no, or 23 now. She's like, well, we have this plan, it's free, and it helps cover the cost of drugs that aren't covered by insurance. She's like, are you interested? And I'm like, it's free? She goes, yeah. I said, all right, yeah, let's see. So I sign up for it. She's like, okay, hold on, let me go check. So she goes and checks, and it now drops the price to $18. So it's $18. So it was 28. I'm sorry. Well, originally it started at 350. Now it dropped to 28. Then it dropped to 23. Now it's $18 a month, or $18 for 3 months. So $6 a month it cost me now. I can get an entire year, 2 years. I get 2 years worth of this stuff for less than the cost of 3 months when it had a patent. Now, why was that able to happen? How did that happen? Well, again, patents. Now, some people say, well, don't you believe in, intellectual property rights, and don't you believe in, copyrights and, inventions and all that? Sure, absolutely. If you have a great idea and you invent something, absolutely you should be paid for it. However, just because you have a patent on it, that doesn't mean you should prevent anyone else from making it too. You can have royalties. So, let's say you invent the cure for cancer. So you're telling me that everyone in that situation, are you going to agree with, well, Merck did develop a cure for cancer and they do have a 10-year patent. So, hey, The price is 50 grand. I mean, they have patent. That is what it is. Nothing wrong with that. Now, damn well, if a drug company came out with an actual cure for cancer and they said, take this pill and you're golden, people would be screaming at the government or at the company to make that drug, take the patent away, or to make it accessible to everyone else at a cheap price. But no, the patent can't do it. Sorry. So that's how a free market in prescription drugs works. When a patent is gone and people are allowed to make it and compete, prices have no choice but to fall, because that's what free markets do. They compete. When there's no government in the way, they're allowed to compete. So, and I asked the lady just out of curiosity. I said, okay, well, now that it's, $6 a month, I said, how much is the Merck? If I still wanted like the original, the non-generic brand, how much is that one? She said, oh, it's still $3.50. I'm like, gee, how many of those have you sold? She's like, I couldn't tell you the last time I actually filled one of those. So now that, I will agree, is greed on the part of Merck. They refuse to lower their price. I mean, so no one's buying it. They had a monopoly. Now no one buys their drugs, because now they can get it for $6, $18 for 3 months versus $350. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't. But again, now how is that bad? People say competition is bad. I would love someone to explain to me how the scenario I just laid out, from the price of $350 for 3 months to $6 to $18 for 3 months, please tell me how that hurts society. Because that's the argument I'll get. Well, you got to have fair competition. Got to have fair competition. They're pricing their stuff too low. That is like the most ridiculous argument I ever hear. We have to have, like, the Walmart argument. I love that argument. People say, oh, well, we can't have Walmart. Walmart is a wicked, evil company, because what they do is they come in and they drive all the mom and pop stores out of business, and then they take over, and then now they own everything. So we have to have fair competition. Now ask yourself this question: who does fair competition help, and who does it hurt? It helps the 5 people who own the mom and pop store. It hurts everyone else in society, because if there's fair competition laws that says, Walmart can't price a pair of socks below, say, $1.50, well, now that means you, the consumer, are forced to pay higher, at least $1.50, for something that maybe Walmart could have sold you for 75 cents. But we have to do it, well, in the name of jobs, because if we don't have protection, mom and pop are going to go out of business. Well, so what? If they can't compete, that's fine. Then those resources need to be given to someone who can. You can't just have jobs for the sake of jobs. That's the problem. People say we gotta, like tariffs, protectionism. That's wrong. It doesn't make sense. Again, what you do is you enrich few at the expense of everyone else. It's the same exact thing with unions. Union people make all this money, they get all these high wages, and then the non-union wage is like 50% less of the union wage. Now, who does that help and who does that hurt? Just like the best question to ask whenever laws come out like this is to do like what detectives and stuff do. When they're investigating crimes, one of the first things, at least the cops that I've talked to, the first question they ask is to find who did it, who benefits. Who benefits? So when there's a murder, the first thing they ask, who benefits from this murder? Is it the wife, insurance? Who benefits? It's the same thing with these laws. Fair competition, just ask yourself, who benefits? And who loses is another good one to ask. Same thing with unions, who benefits? Okay, so let's take General Motors. General Motors has a biggest union in the country. They demand all this stuff, demand everything. If there was no union at General Motors, you know how cheap cars would probably be? They'd be ridiculously cheap. But we can't have that because, union workers have to make, $85 an hour or something for turning a wrench for 8 hours a day for a job that, again, probably a 20-year-old can do that requires no skill. Machines do most of that work now anyway. I'm not trying to, disrespect the auto workers, but those guys are completely overpaid. So it's just, so again, ask yourself with the GM situation, who benefits and who loses? So however many employees GM has, let's just say, 100,000. So 100,000 people benefit from those high wages. Well, who loses? The millions and millions of consumers who pay for GM cars. They lose. So is that right? No, absolutely not. If you had a free market, you wouldn't have that. There wouldn't be that. Now then people go back. When I make this argument, they say, well, maybe that's true. They'll never concede and say, yep, you're right. What they'll say is, well, that might be true. However, if we didn't have unions, then GM would be paying their employees 5 cents an hour. And they'd all be working in sweatshops, no air conditioned, horrible, miserable conditions, working like 80 hours a week. Is that what you want? And that, again, is they keep comparing it to, the Industrial Revolution and the horrible times that those people had. So I'm not going to get into this whole thing. This is definitely a story, for another show. But there's so many debates that I'm looking forward to having on this show that I really can't wait. Let's see, what else should we talk about here? If there's anything else, we have free market and drugs, minimum wage, Walmart. Let's see if there's anything going on at Zero Hedge. Oh, so we got this story of the ISIS comes to America. Oklahoma man beheads woman after being fired. So now somebody got their head cut off in Oklahoma. Now, oh my God, ISIS is here. Oh crap! I was watching a video earlier in the day by a professor, Michael Humer. Excellent presentation, and he was talking about the irrationality of political authority. And basically, what he was doing is he was talking about this quote war on terror. The war on terror it's stupid, but basically what he says, he had a chart and he said, okay, here's the number of people that have died in terrorist attacks on the United States since the year 2000. Since 1990. So 24 years. How many people have died in terrorist attacks against the U.S. since 1990? The number was like 3,522 people. That included the Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, and some other stuff. Then he said, okay, now how many lives have been lost since fighting the war on terror? It's almost double. Double the amount of people have died fighting terror than have actually died from terror in the United States. It's like almost 7,000 people that have died fighting against this war on terror than the people who are actually harmed by the terrorism. He said more people die from bad reactions to prescription drugs every year than the people that have been killed since terrorists have attacked since 1990. So basically his point is that the government loves to overblow things, so that way the fear and all that stuff, it's just ridiculous. They want everybody to get scared so they can justify the war and say, oh well, we got to go over there, we got to stop these people. What happened to Obama saying that he wants to stop all the wars? What happened to us pulling out of Iraq and what happened to transparency, and what happened to, the rule of law? Again, in my opening, I love that speech that he gave back in, 2009 when he took office, and he said, hey, I'm different. I'm going to be different. Transparency and the rule of law, that is the cornerstone of my presidency. And it's been the complete opposite. I mean, this guy has signed so many laws in secret. He's broken so many constitutional laws, it's not even funny. And he's going on the same imperialistic mission that all the presidents before him have done. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, both George Bushes, Clinton. They're all the same. They always do that. And I was watching something the other day where they had a quote from Nixon, that movie about him, and the guy, basically the interviewer was like, so are you telling me that it's okay for the president to detain and kill Americans without due process? Is that what you're saying? And Nixon gets mad and says, what I'm saying is that when the president does something, it's not illegal. And you're like, what? So apparently the Constitution does not apply to the president. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Again, I'll get some more topics. I would love to talk about some of these. I mean, I would love for anyone listening who wants to discuss a specific topic. If you want to be on the show, send me an email to defendingfreedomandliberty@gmail.com, or you can try and send me a message through YouTube if you want. You could follow me on Twitter at defendfreedom78. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's defendfreedom76. Sorry about that. So Twitter is defendfreedom76. Email is defendingfreedomandliberty@gmail.com. If you want to be on the show, I am more than happy to take anybody on here. We can debate if you want. We can just talk. No big deal. Just send me an email with the topic you'd like to discuss, and I'll email you back, and we'll see if we can make it happen. So again, everybody, thanks for listening. I appreciate it, and take care. We'll talk to you soon.